Good evening, everyone. I think we can webinar. I think it's 6:05, so I think we can start the webinar. So good evening to everyone. So this is the second webinar as part of the series of webinars organized by CILT on road safety. So the first webinar we had on road safety audit done by Dr. Loshaka Pereira from Moroto University. And today we have a speaker from Kotalavala Defense University, Dr. Ishani Dias, who will be talking on a very important topic, which is on vulnerable road user safety. Without further ado, I will introduce the speaker today. Dr. Ishani Dias graduated with a PhD in civil engineering from Kansas State University, USA. Prior to that, she obtained her master's and Bachelor of Science degree in engineering, in civil engineering from University of Moratuwa. She has over 10 years of experience in transportation engineering research. And she is also an alumni of the Transport Engineering Division of the Department of Civil Engineering, University of Moratuwa. Her research area is mainly focused on road safety, and she has earlier been involved in several road safety projects funded by ADB and World Bank, as well as she was a team member of the committee appointed to prepare the strategic action plan for road safety in Sri Lanka that was funded by WHO. So currently she is working as a senior lecturer at the Department of Civil Engineering at KDU. So welcome Dr. Ishani to the webinar series, and we are very thankful that you accepted our invitation to present on this very important topic of road user safety. So I will now hand it over to you. Thank
you. Thank you very much, Dr. Pasindu. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, you're good.
Okay, let me share my screen. All right. So, good evening to all the attendees. So today's topic at the second webinar, as Dr. Pasindu mentioned, the vulnerable road user safety. So to begin with the road safety issue, and before talking about the road safety situation in Sri Lanka and what is vulnerable road safe, who is the vulnerable road user, I will first have a glance about the global statistics and how significant this road safety issue currently is. Right. So if I take global statistics, number one cause of death for children and young adults of 5 to 29 years of age is considered to be by road crashes. And these are the statistics from the Global Safety Report 2018, which is the latest version of the report from WHO. And road traffic crashes considered to be the 8th leading cause for deaths of people of all ages, regardless of the age group. That has happened to be the 8th leading cause. And when the last by 2018, 1.35 million deaths occur each year due to road traffic crashes, and 10 years back it was 1.27 as an annual average. So when we compare the road safety situation, or how bad the situation is between low-income countries and high-income countries, it has found that the death rate is higher, 3 times higher in low-income countries compared to the high-income countries when it comes to road crashes. So if I look at road crashes in Sri Lanka for 2019, according to the published crash statistics, if I consider the road user categories as published in National Council for Road Safety, 41% of the road crashes happened due to or related with motorcyclists. And next comes the pedestrians. And if you go look for the other vulnerable users, we have bicyclists 7%, and pedestrian 27% likewise. And if I take the all statistics that over 38,000 crashes occur every year in Sri Lanka, if you look back the past 10 years or so, and about 3,000 people die on roads every year in Sri Lanka, regardless of the category, age, or other characteristics. So approximately 14 deaths per 100,000 population. So it is more or less the same when it comes to Southeast Asia Pacific rate when it comes considering the population and the death rate. So if I look at vulnerable road users, so to begin with the discussion, so first we have to identify who is a vulnerable road user. So those road users with the highest risk of meeting with the crash, as well as after meeting with the crash, they have the highest possibility to end up with the most severe impact or most severe injury severity. So compared to other road users, the vulnerable road users are particularly exposed to injury as they are not protected by, we call it like we are not protected by a shell as a vehicle when we are a pedestrian or a cyclist or a motorcyclist. So if you look at the statistics here, if I take the fatalities in 2016, we have data from Sri Lanka Traffic Police until 2017 from University of Moratuwa, and but 2017 data seems a little incomplete, so that's why I'm sticking to some calculations using 2016 data. So by the percentages, as a percentage wise, it does not have a much variation over the years, but the number wise, it is increasing obviously. So if you look at the categories of road users, 32% of the fatalities are with motorcycle riders or moped riders, and then 18% are pedestrians, and 10% are three-wheelers. So if you look at Southeast Asia or the Southeast Asian countries as general, they consider in the global reports, they consider in 2 to 3 motor vehicles, they consist up to 42% of the 43% of the crashes. And if you look at this data, this is also about 42, so it is much equal. But when it comes to other Southeast Asian countries, pedestrian crashes are only pedestrian fatalities are only up to 14%, but in Sri Lanka it is higher, little higher than that, 18%. And when it comes to cyclists, it is 2% in Southeast countries, and in Sri Lanka it has found as 5%. So we'll see like other categories, like from the statistics you recognize that who are the major components inside this fatality group or people who die. And so these are the major categories. But if you if I go back, and you can see that three-wheelers are also coming a little higher compared to the recent past. Three-wheeler traffic or the three-wheeler road users are also has been identified as significant numbers in casualties. So I think in modern researchers and new researchers, we'll have to think of this three-wheeler road safety as a vulnerable user as well. But up to now, globally, it is not recognized and as a major threat, unlike in Sri Lanka. So if I consider, I would like to add that as one vulnerable road user. And regardless of the vehicle type, again, when the age of the road user is lesser than 15 years old or greater than 55 or 60, we consider them as children and elderly, actually, respectively. So they are also considered as vulnerable road users. And other than that, young drivers and also elderly drivers are also considered as vulnerable road users, because in that case, they are more likely to cause a crash as well. So then what we should think is why these crashes, why these vulnerable crashes happen, and why the situation has made that these vulnerable users have end up with higher injuries. So it has been what do you call recognized that in many literature that being less protected than a car occupant would be the first reason or the cause why they are being vulnerable, and then the lack of separation from other road users would be the next thing that has been considered identified in literature. That is, when you are walking on the road or when you are cycling on the road, the protection you have against the motorized traffic would be something really important for the pedestrian or the cyclist to have the safer feeling, and then more to reduce conflicts between the motor traffic. So in conventional way, we would rather put a safety fence or an elevated sidewalk, or at the minimum situation, or actually it's not the minimum situation. If you take one step, then mostly what we can find is the white lane marking separated for cycle lanes and cyclists, and as I learned recently, for pedestrians for shared use. That is good for, as Professor Bandara mentioned, it is good only for when the cyclist and pedestrian traffic is low in volume. But other than that, if you have higher pedestrian volumes, these kind of painted lines or say elevation facilities would not help or safeguard the non-motorized transport user. So then the infrastructure and the vehicle design that prioritizes the cars and other motorized transport is another reason why these vulnerable road users are in this worst situation. So I have a small video clip here. So this is from 1939. This shows how they have tried the vehicle being retrofitted with a scooping technique, so that when people cross the road and the driver has to actually manually operate this scoop so that he would not run over sudden darting out of pedestrians off the sidewalk. So actually now the ITS is being incorporated in many vehicles, and then sorry, okay, and that means here the scoop should be operated manually, but now with the technology, the detection can happen by the mobile phone or the when it comes to worst case scenario, the sensors and all. So I think now the situation is better. I mean, vehicles could build in more safer manner, but we do not see a decline in pedestrian crashes. So this first image in the left shows one abstract I got from Comtrans 2014 report. They have predicted an increase of a number of motorized vehicles in the roads. But if you look at the public transport share, in the modal share, it has been reduced significantly from 58% to, when they're predicting to 2035 to 41%. So if we can do a trip transportation, I mean Western Province trip study, we can validate or find whether this trend is still there. But what we can do from the data available would be to see what I show here is the number of the vehicle population by 2017. That is again published in RMV website. 56% of all the vehicle fleet in the country, that means upon the registrations, are motorcycles, and 16% are three-wheelers, and all the other vehicle categories are lesser than or equal or lesser than 10% of the vehicle fleet. And the alarming fact is that the motorcycle traffic is increasing. Number of motorcycles increasing 9% as in an annual growth rate. So this is again why we are facing a major issue in vulnerable road user crashes. So when it comes to the first category, if I consider, the pedestrians, right? So walking as a means of transport is commonly used as used for short trips, right? We do not walk for 1 kilometer or so. There's a particular maximum convenient walking distance. So according to the Comtrans study, of all trips in the Western province, about 22% are traveled by non-motorized transportation. But if you look carefully, 92% of the bus users start and also end their trip by foot. So further, if you take the railway users, 74% of the railway users start their trip by foot, unless otherwise it's a motorcycle or a three-wheeler or by a cycle. And but all the times, if you can see in the left side of the slide, the image shows in all the proportions, like if the summation was up to 82% of the railway users end their trips by foot. So most of our road users, even without knowing, are ultimately pedestrians. So if I look at the pedestrian crashes, so that was about the pedestrian demand in the country, and this is about the crashes. So on average, about 8,000 pedestrians per year are being casualties at road crashes in Sri Lanka, right? So in the secondary axis, I have plotted the fatalities, and the number of fatalities are increasing gradually over the last 4 years, even though the majority or the highest percentage of out of the crashes would be the severities would be the non-grievous or minor injuries. Increasing number of fatalities is something that is not we can ignore. So if we look at where were they walking when they met with the crash, in other countries, their accident report card or the crash report card has like off-road, on the road, parking lot, that kind of variety of data categories are there. But in Sri Lanka, we do not have such a pedestrian location category. What we have would be whether the pedestrian met with a crash near a crossing, within 50 meters of the crossing, at or near an intersection, things like that. So again, we do not know whether at the location where the pedestrian hit with the vehicle, whether there was a sidewalk or not. So ultimately, we cannot find who's at fault, whether the road or the human, right? So do we have sufficient pedestrian facilities to blame the pedestrian that for walking on the carriageway? So we'll have to parallel to enforcing jaywalking or finding the pedestrian fault, we have to improve pedestrian facilities. So by then again, even if we have good pedestrian facilities, the attitude of the society have a great toll on this not improving of the road safety situation in the country. So these are some photos I collected from Facebook, majorly from the Sri Lankan Traffic Violations Facebook page. So you can see how even for minimal, even in the top leftmost photo, you can see the sidewalk is very wide, maybe 1.5 meters, which is very encouraging or facilitating pedestrians. But you can see when vehicles are parked on top of the sidewalks or the space that is available for the pedestrians, they are forced to walk on the carriageway as seen in the photo below. And not even, even in on the pedestrian crossings, this attitude of people are not helping the facilities either. So let's look at this short video. Try to understand what happens here. Yeah, so this dash cam footage is from this vehicle who stops to give away or to let this mother and the child to cross the road, and the car coming from the left lane also stops, but the truck doesn't see that, and then he comes and hit the car and it drifts away. And this mother and child got, luckily got away from the crash. And if you look at the other one, I have found plenty of videos, but I found something related to the pedestrian situation here. So actually, when some drivers, they're not aware even about this rule that they are not supposed to overtake at pedestrian crossings. If, of course, they, by the time that they took the driving license, they were told, but this is not a practice, and this is I only found this video, but there are so many situations in the real life we encounter that people ignoring that rule or disrespecting that rule. So this one shows many aspects, many wrong aspects. You can see the vehicle with the dash cam stops before the pedestrian crossing uh, to leave some space for the pedestrians to cross, because actually we should treat the pedestrian crossing similar to a junction box where we are not supposed to park on top of it. We have to drive on it only if the road ahead is clear, right? So that's the practice. So here you can see again, surprisingly, one bus also stopped before the crossing. When the space was there, it went out, but this truck is again violating that rule. And later on, in a couple of seconds, you can see our other vulnerable road user, that is motorcycles. So you can see even how they treat the double line and how they are meeting with the what do you call conflicts, very close conflicts with each other as well. So marked crosswalk should be supplemented with other treatments when any of the following conditions exist. So just because you put a marked crossing, that does not mean you're facilitating the pedestrians. Because you have to see whether what's the speed that they're coming towards the crossing on the vehicle, what's the environment, and this kind of behavior that the facilities would encourage more. So again, this is one. Again, this is about the pedestrian's fault. You can see the green light is on for vehicles, but yet one old man and a woman is crossing the road. So that is risk taking. And this pedestrian is also risk taking because he is crossing the road when you can see a pedestrian crossing somewhere little, like few meters away. So those kind of risk taking behavior we can find so much. So what we can do as traffic engineers or planners would be to try some road diets and making these crosswalks and sidewalks visible, or raise side crosswalks. And there are so many measures. So these are a couple of guidelines and reports that we can use as stakeholders. Then the next category is the cyclists. Number of cyclists in Sri Lankan roads are very, very, very few. And but if you consider crashes, there are about 2,000 crashes involving cyclists in Sri Lanka. But of course, it's considered in the population, it is less. So because of that, I didn't do much of a crash analysis on cyclist crashes. So in other countries, there's a tendency of high proportion single cycle crashes, but in Sri Lanka, it is not. Sorry, 95% of the time, it was about two vehicles, one being a cycle and another being another vehicle. So we can, in Sri Lanka, we do not have rules of like even the what do you call the helmet regulation for cyclists are not there. So that kind of we are lagging behind many aspects. So these are some places where these are some places where some institutions have posted some guidelines or some statements regarding cyclists. Majorly, they are saying use of bicycle helmets would be good, and lack of separated bike lanes increase the risk of injuries. And NATSA is saying prepare yourself before you move into the road or before you start your journey, that kind of things. And then the left side photo shows a shared walkway where bicycles and pedestrians are given the same area, but again demarcated by, their spaces are demarcated by one line. And then you can see some armadillos, but there are pros and cons, and we can do every time when we can introduce something from another country or a different area from the same country, we can do a pilot study and see whether how effective that would be, short term and long term. And something that again, majorly in Sri Lanka, at intersections, they forget about cyclists completely. So that's again an issue. And actually that reflects from the lesser number of cyclists on the road. So by giving more facilities, we can reduce the conflicts. But again, even with the few number of crashes, to reduce the injury severity, we have to reduce the speeds. And some countries, they consider speed limits for the cyclists as well. Again, about motorcyclists, this is a very broad area, which I'm not going to talk into too much detail. About 14% of the trips in Western province itself is made by motorcyclists. If you take all the motorized trips, it is 18%. But if you take annual number of crashes involving motorcycles, that is 20,000 motorcycles are meeting with crashes every year. So that is an alarming number. So here the helmet laws, if you consider where we are compared to the other countries, in Sri Lanka, all riders with different engine categories, we have the rule that we have to wear the helmet, but there is no enforcement or regulation to check the standard. If you are wearing a helmet, that's sufficient. But in India and many other countries, you have to wear the proper standard helmet as well. So this is one guideline you can use to improve the motorcycle safety situation. And next category that I mentioned, not the road user category, but this is the age category in the vulnerable road users. So each year, if I will first say about the European statistics, which has a higher population, 700 children under the age of 15 are killed, and about 100,000 are injured. And with a higher population, we have 2,500 children-related crashes annually, and about 200 kids die on the road in an annual average basis in Sri Lanka. Right? So if you think about the severities, you can see about 1,500 or the critical injuries, and the minor injuries are over 4,000, and you can see the death rate is about 2%. And of those children fatalities, you can see majority of the children fatalities occur related to a three-wheeler, when they were riding a three-wheeler. And next as a pedestrian, and third one as a motorcycle user. So not only these pedestrian and motorcycle users are vulnerable road users, but even that children, when they're children riding those vehicles, the situation become worse. So this is how with the age it increases. So I will think I will skip some of these slides if I seems like the time is running out. So this is the gender wise, it is not surprising fact that the boys are in the higher percentage than girls. Element type, again, this is something similar. So first of all, if I take the right side photo, if you take the road user vehicle categories, 45% of the time it was a motorized vehicle, and but if you take the motorcycle apart away from it, and if you take Motorcycles is 25% and pedestrian 25% likewise. And if I take the motorized vehicles separately, the percentages of vehicles are in the left side, and you can see three-wheelers and motorcycles play a major role in children-related crashes. And time of the crash, if you look at it, sorry about the line on the title, 7 to 8 a.m. and again actually the school starting time and the ending times are, you can see the peak crashes, which is obvious, but here are some facts to find out. And you can see 5 to 6 p.m. also, maybe because of tuition or the time they are going home. And if you take the collision types, 11% of the time these children were entering the road from the left sidewalk to the or the shoulder to the road. That's where that's the highest collision type that has recognized in the crash statistics. So this is again a comparison between a Sri Lankan study and a statistics in USA, location-wise. And these are some things that have found successful in other countries, making the sidewalks near schools visible. And because it has found that about 20% of the time the crashes are happening between 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. That is about 400 crashes per year on average. And out of those crashes happen during the night time, it has found that 80% out of it, either there were no street lighting or the lighting was improper. So these are some mechanisms that can be practiced. Reflective clothing reflectors. And this is about the what they call the seat belt wearing. So when the seat belt was not worn, the grievous injuries are increasing. And if I look at the seat belt law, when compared to other countries, Sri Lanka only ask for the seat belt in the front seat occupants. And when it comes to child restraints, it is something that we should look forward. This is like, if you take global picture, you can see very few green color countries and very few then the red color countries are higher. Even Sri Lanka comes to the red color country because we do not have any law restricting children being transported in the first or in the front seating, which is, I mean, people who know about this will never take their children in the front seats, but still we can see our educated friends also, they have their children transporting on the front seat, which is surprising and actually very dangerous. So some factors about how important the car seat is and how the car seat type decides over the age and the weight of the child. And these are some, again, some teaching that we can do to children as teachers or parents, which we covered in our, I think 1 or 2 years ago in one of the, again, CILT webinar. One, again, similar to that, school walking zones or programs or campaigns, making the school children aware about the situation. And the next one is the elderly. So how old is old is considered as many different ages in different countries. So finally, it was I realized that it ultimately ends up with the age where age when a person retires. So when I did the crash analysis, I used from 55 to above, and you can see the fatality rate increases with the age increase from 55 to 80, which is not surprising again. So in the NCR HRP report, there is a specific report for old road users, and this is not a new research area in other countries, even though I have not seen, I think I haven't studied a lot, but I haven't seen a significant study in all the drivers or all the vehicle users, road users in Sri Lanka. In a summary, during the last year, during so many webinars that we participated, they were all taking this as a good situation because the people get to think about public transportation a lot, safer transportation, and found this pandemic giving a unique opportunity to rebuild our cities, right? So rather than going for short-term plans, thinking about the big picture and planning ahead. So these vulnerable road users need to be given attention in the long-term plan, and not only in city planning, but also in national policies in transportation. So to wind up, I will briefly go through this star rating that was proposed by IRAP. So this, we can use these to evaluate our roads where we are and identify where our room to improve ourselves, our cities, and improve our road safety to reduce these numbers. Okay, thank you for listening, and over to you, Dr. Pasindu.
Thank you, Dr. Ishani, for the presentation. I think you covered all the key aspects of vulnerable road user safety with respect to pedestrians, motorcyclists, and also three-wheel users, and also touching on the issues faced by the elderly and the school children. So I think now the forum is open for questions. Till you can either type it in the chat box, or you can ask questions directly. So till everyone gets ready, there's already a question posted by RKTK Ranavaka. The question is on, based on the local context, what type of measures can we propose to provide a safe systems approach for vulnerable road users? I think that is the current way of thinking. We are looking at road safety. You talk about the safe system approach to make sure all the issues are addressed at different levels. So, Dr. Ishani, what are your views on that?
Yeah, it's a very good question, but unfortunately, there is no like a blanket wise application. No, okay, here's the solution, and you put it everywhere in Sri Lanka. No, we cannot do that like that. So, for example, we did a study in near Rahula College in Mathura, where there are multiple schools located nearby, and we found out the cyclist demand. For example, if I take one vulnerable user category, cyclist demand, and found out how long in each road link this cycle demand goes on, and then the volume of the cycle demand, and accordingly we propose what is the cycling facility that we have to incorporate. And with the user survey among school children, we ask about how willing they are to come by a cycle and so forth. So again, just like the rating system, star rating system I showed, we can select whatever the city we want to develop and see whether compare the demand and provide the sufficient facilities accordingly, rather than spending the minimum facilities, minimum budget on all type of roads and road categories. So for different, I think with higher, like if you take near PETA, then it requires higher facilities for pedestrians, not cyclists. Likewise, so you have to go with the local wise answers for that. But national wise, we have, we have discussed it, the national action plan. Since it is not finalized and approved, I will not comment on that. So yeah, I think I answered his question.
Right, thank you. So the issues of when you talk about the safety of school children, any proposals to introduce these things in the what do you call, the curriculum or awareness? How do you plan? How do you suggest to build awareness among school children? Is it just purely on through awareness programs, or is there a more structured approach to build the road safety education?
Yeah, something that we actually, myself and I think also Dr. Pasindu, we got the opportunity to win a scholarship to participate in this Delft road safety course in Netherlands. There we practice some campaigns, like awareness programs and campaigns are two things that we can go with the schools, starting with the schools, and if maybe an alumni of a school who is a famous person and can involve in these people, some significant level of awareness that can happen. Because at the moment, like if a student cross the road in a wrong place, no one is narrowing an eye at him, because that is okay to most of the people. So we should improve the attitude of the school children to realize that that is not okay to cross the road at a wrong location, or things like that. So campaigns are really good. I haven't seen significant campaigns like going to media wise or being famous people involving in this. So that is required. And I think highway engineering societies like CILT and as transport engineering division, I think there is so much we can do by the student chapters and all, involving with the schools. Yes.
Right. So any other questions from the participants? You can unmute yourself and ask.
Yes, sir. Sir?
Yes, please go ahead and ask.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sir, I don't have a question, but I am having some proposal.
Right.
Okay.
When we look at three wheels, the major issue, as I see, the three wheels. If we can convert it to four wheels, I think we can reduce some accidents done by three wheels. Thank you.
Okay, I think the number of three-wheelers, right? So it has been, that's why I mentioned this is not, it's a new research area. No, I mean, there are very minimum research, so like at least pilot projects. As I'm not involved in RDA project regarding that, I'm not aware whether they are doing something currently about it. I think because I think a couple of things are tried by the police without much, I think, consulting the expertise on these areas by the police itself some time back with giving them a separate lane. But like with our low capacities of the road, taking away the existing space from the other motor traffic to give it to three-wheelers would be the last thing that we would like to do. So I don't think we have a direct answer in our pocket to give to this three-wheeler problem. So yeah, from NCRS point of view, maybe Dr. Pasandu can add something to it.
Yeah, I think that goes beyond the, controlling the three-wheelers. It's a bit of an economic and social issue. So I think that will take time. That will take time. Immediately what you can do is introduce more safety features or improve their training and awareness on safety. And beyond that, it's practically there are some issues in implementing that, because there's a lot of it's interlinked with the economy and the livelihood of a lot of people. So we have to be careful when we are trying to promote those kinds of measures very urgently. So I think there's another question from Dimanta De Silva.
Yeah, Pasandu, I will ask the question. Dr. Ishani, I think you covered the statistics very nicely about how the vulnerable users and based on issues on the users, like because the accidents or fatalities happening because of the user behavior. But what my question is, do you have any statistics or data to say, or whether you can kind of separate the data to find out whether these issues, or especially if we take the pedestrians, whether these have happened because of lack of proper design, right? So we have seen sometimes the pedestrian accidents happening on pedestrian crossings because of lack of proper lighting. Maybe it is on a wrong location. maybe because the signal, because of the incorrect signal, timing or arrangement. Because we have seen enough places where there is green arrow and blinking green arrow and also green to the pedestrian. So if that is, those are the things that we can actually change a lot. In other countries, you would see that there are the more pelican crossings would help to minimize the pedestrian accidents, because there would be a light blinking when a pedestrian is crossing to give awareness that the pedestrian is moving, or proper lighting providing. So if you can, question number one, do you have any statistics to say that it may, some of our accidents or can be because of improper design? That might help us to kind of identify whether we can solve that. Number two, now you talked about providing better facilities. Now, if you go into some areas, let's say Colombo 7 area, there is enough pedestrian paths or walking facilities which separates the pedestrians from the road. Do you, from that kind of a places, have you looked into that kind of data to say, okay, these areas does not have this kind of pedestrian accident or cycle accidents because this separated infrastructure is provided? Then that might be indication to say, okay, that we can say this is the reason. So unless we, so otherwise, can we say that by providing proper facilities like separate pedestrian paths, we can reduce the accidents? I'm just asking whether there are any work around these.
Well, that covers very much area that I wanted to address that I didn't have time within the 40 minutes. Thank you, Dr. Dimantha, for your question. The first answer is no, that the factors that I showed, for example, the nighttime visibility or the light, street lighting being there or not, all of those are like associated characteristics, not causing characteristics, because they are like when A was there, B was also there. That kind of a association was there. But like black spot analysis or any other crash investigations have not been carried out to identify what really happened there. So for that, in the access database that we have from Sri Lankan Traffic Police, it is not sufficient to do that kind of an analysis. And again, it doesn't say whether at that location there was a traffic signal, there was a sidewalk or not, and whether the pedestrian crossing was marked or not, and their luminosity, how visible ahead. So there is no mechanism currently to check the luminosity and okay, this is the time that it has to be repainted, that kind of thing, when I briefly checked. And next one, to find out, to say whether if you provide more facilities, whether it will decrease the number of crashes. No studies have been done yet, because I have done some pedestrian related crash study, and by literature I didn't find in local studies, if I'm not mistaken. So I think that's like, for example, when I did studies in USA, the traffic police helped us, the research team, to do some changes, and then to check whether what the pilot study come up with, and that kind of research encouraging or facilitating mechanism I have not experienced here in Sri Lanka, at least not yet. So if we can go with that kind of a facility or arrangement, we can of course check this, right? But here it says like when the in the collision type, it says when the pedestrian was walking on the road or on the sidewalk, that is being noted. But we don't know whether it is because of that the crash happened. So too much into detail and analysis cannot be done only by the data that we can find in the book. We have to go to that place and check, rather like black spot studies. So did I answer your question, Dr. Dimantha?
I think you did. So yeah, I think what you said is more like not much studies are being done on that area, not available. So maybe that's a good area for us to take a look in the future, if we are going to, if you want to kind of pinpoint and say, okay, this is the reason, These are reasons, and also doing this will help us to mitigate it. So anyway, yeah, thank you for your answer. Right, thank
Yeah,
you.
actually, that has to be started somewhere. We have to find first, at least for a study, we have to find the location where there have been so many pedestrian crashes, and like that's kind of be a local project, and that has to funding. Yes, it of course it's a good start, but academic level, I think we do not have much of a say about. But I don't think that I mean it can be improved to such a situation in the future. But currently, yeah, so we have to improve that area. But yeah, thanks again for your question.
Also, when police records, very rarely do they identify the roadway issues that may have caused the accident. So I think less than 1% of the accidents have they said identified roadway related issue as a causal factor. So as
Yeah, they have this pre-crash factor.
Yeah, it's mostly about the human factors that they identify. So that's a poor issue. I mean, that's a problem with the accident recording. And also a question from Shafna Najib, is there a technique to improve road safety? Like using CCTV camera, I mean, videos or monitoring using CCTV camera? I think that's what the question is. Is there a scope for using such measures to improve road safety?
Well, scope in the sense in other countries, it is already been practiced, not even in other countries. In expressways in Sri Lanka, it has already been practiced. Like if by the camera, vehicle detection camera, they can detect whether the vehicle is speeding. And then with the vehicular registration number, we get the ticket or the fine. So similarly, in other countries, there are such camera rules for, or the ticketing rules for red light running. So in the vehicular mount, in the traffic signal light, there's a vehicle detection camera. If you enter the signal or the signalized intersection during the red time period, your photo is being taken with the in USA actually the number plate is in the rear of the vehicle. So there are two photos with the vehicle, the driver and the number plate, which is being sent to the road user or the driver vehicle registration address. So it is not not something that we cannot do. But before that, we have so much infrastructure to develop that. Even now, there is no like synchronizing manner of like gathering information from vehicular traffic or the vehicular detection cameras to research institutes or traffic like finding situation that is not there in the local roads other than the highways. So yes, that has opportunity, but still not spread out sufficiently.
Right. So any more questions? I think if there's no more questions, I think we've reached the time also to conclude. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry for the late. So I have a question.
Right.
Sir?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry for this question. When we consider about road accidents, we can see more accidents by three-wheelers. Scientifically, that vehicle has an issue about the balance. So don't we have any solution for this, which is helpful for minor passengers who use three-wheelers? This is only one area, actually.
Yeah, actually, that is beyond.
Yes.
You have a further question or?
No, madam.
Okay, so what you're saying is correct. Again, just like if I take the same question, like that is, we cannot analyze that issue from the accident database or the crash database. For example, how the three-wheeler crash happened, we do not know. But by general knowledge, we know that they have seen so many videos how three-wheelers meet with crashes by toppling over, flipping over. So this has to be looked at something like mechanical wise or vehicle improvement wise. As traffic engineers, I don't think we have, I think myself have the scope to, or the plan to comment on that. So that has to be, I think, one part, not only by the vehicle design and how fragile that is, because in some articles they call it an eggshell. A three-wheeler is kind of an eggshell that if even a small damage, it get collided. But driver behavior wise also, it has to have so much improvement, because you can see the young drivers and the three-wheeler crashes have a higher involvement by observation. Like I can study that, I mean, analyze that in the crash data as well. But that day-to-day life, we know that the young drivers drive in a very enthusiastic way and they are risk-taking, and that manner also help, I mean, contribute to higher number of three-wheeler crashes. But the vehicle design part, I will leave to the mechanical engineers and other researchers to touch upon.
Okay, madam, thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Ishani again. So thanks to all the participants who attended this webinar. I think it was useful for everyone to enlighten. I mean, you got enlightened with the issues related to vulnerable road user safety. And thank you again, Dr. Ishani, for that very valuable presentation on a very interesting topic that we all must take very seriously if we are to improve road safety in Sri Lanka. So with that, I will conclude today's webinar and reminding that we will have the third webinar of the series, Road Safety Webinar Series, that is on the 19th of January, which will be on a topic more at policy level, discussing the way forward in terms of the road safety action plan and strategy for Sri Lanka, which will be done by Professor Saman Bandara from Department of Civil Engineering, University of Moratuwa. So thank you all again, and good night.
Thank you, sir. Good night.